Welcome to Real Talk, the show where we look at issues facing our youth. My name is Omékongo, and I'm your host. And people say that today's generation of young people, high school and college students, really are not about anything, are into themselves. Well, with me today, I have two members who represent an organization called Stand Now, which is dedicated to ending genocide and mass atrocities across the country, really showing that our youth are doing extraordinary things at many levels, domestically as well as internationally. With me, I have Ms. Ashley Kroetsch and Ms. Carly Oboth of the Stand Now. I want to say movement because y'all are doing so much, but some people say organization. Tell me what you all do with Stand Now.
Sure. So I've had quite a few positions throughout Stand. I got started as a college student at UNC Chapel Hill. Totally changed my life. 6 years later, I'm still around. I got a phenomenal opportunity to be one of the two non-student positions. Everyone else is a student volunteer, essentially, but they really own the reins of Stand. So as the Stand senior manager, I essentially get to act like a coach to phenomenal student leaders from, as you said, across the country. And they form this decision-making body, the managing committee. So again, they make all the decisions, all the campaigns, all the blog posts, the web pages that you see, all comes from them. I just get to play this phenomenal mentorship role and help give them that longer-term perspective that my position affords me to see. So I feel really fortunate to be in that position, and everything that you just mentioned is what I feel most appreciative of, because I do get to see students do phenomenal things every day.
And you also have some international chapters.
We do. We have an international presence. It's been up and down in terms of how big the presence is and what we mobilize them toward, but it's building back up, and a lot of that has just come from Stand students who were involved some way here in the States, and they just go abroad and they recognize that there are constituencies there that could totally lend to the organizing model that we have, of course tailoring it within the context of that country, specifically because we do have an advocacy focus in our work. But that's been phenomenal as well, to see students take what was started here and apply it in any context that they find themselves in, because they really have been empowered to be true leaders, even abroad.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
And Carly, talk about your journey to Stand. How did you get involved? What are you doing with it now?
Yeah, I mean, actually, so it's kind of a funny story. I just graduated from American University.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And John Prendergast came my freshman year with Good Charlotte, which was a band I loved in middle school. And so I was like, maybe I should go check it out.
Yeah.
And it was a Raise Hope for Congo event. And that's really my first experience in Congo advocacy and just learning on what's going on in the conflict. And so after that, I found our Stand chapter and got involved. And
so you found it, as in started it yourself?
No, there's a couple people who had already founded the Stand chapter. And they actually went on to start another club, Empower Congo, that was focused on Congo.
Right.
So now I'm a Stand alum, which is weird to say. And now I'm working with the campaigns team at United to End Genocide, which is Stand's partner organization. And so I'm kind of working on ways, developing the Congo campaign, which is exciting, and then also looking at ways that Stand can plug into UEG's campaigns. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, one thing I really enjoy about your organization is that a lot of organizations say that they're student-run, but they're really not.
Yeah.
What have you done over the years to really make sure that student leadership is strong and that students really have an active voice, as opposed to just being directed and told what they need to do and where they need to go?
It's been difficult. It really has. And you're right. There really are very few other organizations out there. And we've done extensive research because once Stand was started and got going and had a little bit of a rhythm to it, we kind of looked around and wanted to find the other experts that we could mimic until we realized that we were indeed the experts of our movement. And that the model that we had piloted really was something new in the world of activism, and particularly student organizing. And there have been a couple factors, I think, that have led to maintaining that student-led aspect. And again, when we say student-led, it's not that the students get to elect the people who then lead the organization or elect the people who then choose the campaigns. These, anywhere 10 to 15 members any given year of the managing committee call all of the shots. And we've been very fortunate that our position within a parent organization has really afforded us that autonomy. And it could have gone the other way, but thankfully we've had mentors along the way that have really, truly understood the impact of Stand. And they understand that it only functions when you really do allow the students to drive everything. They're the ones in touch with the student membership and the new technologies and the new sort of messages of the time. It doesn't work to have adults messaging to students or trying to organize the students. Also, I don't want to be up till 4 a.m. on GChat every day. The students, however, fine doing that. So we've been really lucky, first with Genocide Intervention Network, particularly Sam Bell, Mark Hannis, Janissa Goldbeck were all very influential. John Bagwell when he worked there as well. And they really just kind of carved out a very distinct space for these students to work in. And they really did everything they could to make sure they were empowered. And then once we merged with Saved Our Four, and now we have United and Genocide, and a whole host of new leaders, we went through a process of carving out that same space. And that was a role that I got to play, was really being able to ensure that that space is sort of on paper and guaranteed for future leaders and future teams. But it's also the students.
Right.
I don't know that they would let us take that away from them. I really don't think, when you talk about what it means for a movement or an organization to exist, usually you're talking about things like a listserv, a mass of contacts, or a Facebook page. With STAND, it's one-on-one relationships. It's the student-to-student model, and that's what makes it work. That's what makes it run. It's what makes us flexible in our theory of change and has allowed us to adapt and evolve in our models and in our core priorities. And it's also why the students retain so much power. It's one thing for us to carve out the space. It's another for them to step up and really enter that space and make the most of it. And every team that we've had since we were founded has done exactly that in some way or another. They've done huge things. So I don't even think it would be possible to take that away from them, because we've already created this culture where that's the only way that it works, student leadership. And thankfully that we've seen and produced students who are now such strong leaders. And we always say we want STAND to be a portal, not so much a walled garden. It's okay for students to go out as part of our organization and advocate on other issues that they find important to their community or to them personally. But we like to be the ones who help empower them, sort of the incubators that give them the training and the access to find that potential in them and really make the most out of it. And so, I think long term it's a phenomenal success to have Hill staffers who say, even though they might prioritize other issues that are important to them now, they will say, I got my start in STAND. I would love to have that meeting with your STAND chapter. Bring them in, let's talk. That's incredible access, and that is not something that has ever been on paper. That is students to students just making that happen. And they've created this identity and culture where that's the norm, that type of leadership. So they own it, and I think they're going to continue to own it. So it's both, but it's really them. It's much more them than the organization or a memorandum of understanding or standard operating procedures or anything I have to do with it. It's them.
That's pretty cool.
It's phenomenal.
And Carly, has that been your experience? While at American and coming out of what has your experience been being involved with STAND?
I mean, I owe so much to STAND because it really gave me a chance to kind of grow as a leader. I've been kind of shy, and I've been interested in these issues, but I've never really taken the chance or taken the opportunity to really educate other people and become a leader. And so definitely, I've made so many connections through working with STAND and working with Empower Congo, and it got me the job that I have now. So in that respect, I'm really grateful. But it's an amazing organization.
Now, if I understand correctly, it was started by a student, just while on campus, not someone came out of nowhere and just said, hey, let's do this.
That's the other thing, and I think holding on to our history and not letting that hold us back from evolving, but making sure that is a key part of our ongoing narrative has been important in maintaining that student leadership. Because yes, it was actually originally 3 students at Georgetown University, Nate Wright, Martha, and Ben Bixby. Martha and Ben are now married.
Wow.
Yeah, so
cool.
STAND has had a couple of alum marriages in the past, which is great. And they students at Georgetown, they heard a speech about the atrocities happening in Darfur. They hadn't heard it anywhere else, and they were just simply appalled. Why wasn't this on CNN? Why wasn't this part of the Georgetown curriculum? It's certainly updates, news, and they decided to change that. And so they just sort of started locally. They started in D.C. They won a grant to go do a documentary along with MTV and Chad to look at some of the refugee camps there. Nice. And it just sort of happened to be kind of a perfect storm of circumstances in terms of domestic organizing opportunities. Suddenly you had Save Darfur coming out with this huge media campaign. They had all of the celeb connections. They were able to do sort of the international branding. And then you had groups like GINet popping up, who are really intentional about their theories of change and models, and started to build their relationships with members of Congress and key policymakers. So you had all of this, and then of course the United States government came out and declared it an official genocide in Darfur, and that was another huge catalyst, as controversial as that term always is, huge catalyst for domestic organizing. And so all of a sudden, what started out at Georgetown, these students started to get lots of interest from students across the country who were just like, we want to do something, we know you're doing something, how do we get there?
Yeah.
So suddenly it became necessary to have a little bit more of a formal mechanism that allowed for this national organizing, even international organizing, beyond Georgetown. So the first managing committee was developed. I think they were calling it something like the executive committee back then. It's gone through a lot of different changes. Yeah, it was certainly an official word, and it was something like 15 students, and there wasn't really role division. Everyone just like jumped in, offered what they could. It was also amazing though, because the people who were part of those first couple of managing committees that really did make this a national movement, international movement with huge impact, they were the innovators. They really wanted to establish something that was going to be long term, and so they had the foresight to think through some obstacles that I think a lot of organizations don't know exist until they hit them years later.
Right.
So I think that was part of it, and I feel very fortunate for our founding managing committees, because I don't think STAN would be as strong as it is now without having that foundation. I think another amazing thing is that those same leaders are still a very active part of our alumni network. So they're still constantly willing to give back. They're always willing to do trainings with our new managing committee members, offer campaign ideas, but never in an ownership kind of way. They're also with zero pride or ego, completely willing to take a step back and say, I recognize that, STAN, it's so rare. It's so rare, and it's amazing to watch. And it's also probably why most of the alumni are now my best friends. My entire personal network is now so tied up into my professional network. But it's because you're dealing with people who, at their core, are just living out these same values that they built STAN on. It's not just about putting them on paper and on the website every single day. It's living out these values that they expect our entire movement to follow. Yeah. And that's in their own personal lives. So we're very fortunate to still have that alumni network. And the managing committee has continued to evolve. And at the height of our day, we had 1,000 chapters, high school and college, and international. We had presences across numerous countries. And that was when, that was at the height of the entire movement. That's when everyone was sort of reaching their pinnacle in terms of membership and whatnot. But what I've really been impressed about in terms of STAN is that in comparison to other movement partners, they've been ahead of the curve in taking a step back, being very self-critical, which tends to be part of our culture, and evaluating, and then actually making hard changes and hard decisions that match up with conclusions from that evaluation. So
I want to definitely, I want to stop you there because we're going to go to a break, but I want to talk about some of those hard decisions because you started off with Sudan and now you're doing so many other projects. Exactly. I want to make sure everybody knows about that after the break. We'll be right back with more Real Talk.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. Now, we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm going to feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Welcome back to Real Talk, the show where we look at issues facing our youth. My name is Omékongo, and we're talking with Ashley and Carly of Stand Now. And you've done such a wonderful job of laying out what it is that your organization, what your mission is. But I'd love to hear more about what you've actually done as it relates to different countries, Sudan, Congo. You've done some work on Libya and Syria. Let us know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think at the macro level, STAN has had to evolve constantly. We did go multi-conflict, and then even, I think especially after going multi-conflict, we realized that there just isn't a one-size-fits-all model in terms of organizing and our advocacy. So we've evolved, but we've never gotten truly too far away from our core identity. It's just the mechanisms have changed a little. So working on all these different conflicts have certainly required a switch towards definitely empowering individuals as leaders in their own right, and really coaching them along in that way, so that it's not just about who we can mobilize in the moment with a rapid response request. It's also about who's going to be in the State Department making those calls one day before we even know what's going on. And that's certainly something that was a big takeaway for us when we first got engaged on Libya and then even Syria. So when Stand first went multi-conflict, we focused mainly on Sudan and then Burma and then the DRC. And with Burma and Congo, we focused more on sort of niche areas. We didn't own sort of the entire scope, mainly because there were also partners out there like U.S. Campaign for Burma, et cetera, who already had such a phenomenal narrative, who had been doing so much great work for so long. We really wanted to plug more into their campaigns. So through our partnerships, and especially through individual student leadership on the ground in different areas, we had really close ties with other groups working on those issues as well. So for the most part, it didn't require too much capacity building on our side, just required stronger relationships and smarter activism. And so we continued that, and then we certainly wanted to build out capacity to be more of a rapid response organization, keeping in mind that when Darfur erupted, there was no movement to then mobilize. So much of our time was invested in just building a movement. And by the time you got to the point where that movement was able to be mobilized in a very meaningful way, the worst of the worst disasters were over, and the opportunities to really prevent future ones were decreasing. And so we really wanted to make sure that should that ever happen again, we don't have to invest so much in the movement building. We have a consistent movement, and at least a portion of it is willing and able to be mobilized on the drop of a dime for something like Libya. And so with Libya, that's what we saw. It ended up being a very controversial conflict for us to be engaged on, but not so much because of the front end, but because of the end result. In the beginning, STAND, mainly under its parent organization, Untitled Genocide, were the first ones to release policy asks within 24 hours of sort of the big eruptions of violence. And there was, the threat of the slaughter of a 1 million-person city. You had the ruler actually using rhetoric that was very similar to what we had heard in Rwanda and whatnot, and likening these people to less than human, and that was obviously a warning sign for us.
Almost coming.
But it's a hard thing because again, you're never truly going to be able to prove that you prevented something or how much of it you prevented. However, in the past, we have been able to see what a lack of trying has resulted in. And so, we had to try. And there's lots of room for dialogue about what we could have and will do better next time around. But I think the biggest success was that from the get-go, once the United States was on board, and that came through Susan Rice working through the UN and President Obama really bringing together a full cabinet of people with opinions across the board and using them all to make his own informed opinion, which is very much his style. And so from the get-go, the rhetoric around why we would even consider intervening to save lives in Libya or at least try to prevent direct attacks on civilians was under the guise of the responsibility to protect. And this is something, it's a principle that STAND has really tried to push and really make sure that our membership understands, because at its core, it's in line with what STAND believes. And there are so many steps you can take in terms of preventing atrocities before you get to the intervention stage. But should you get to that stage, recognizing that it's the responsibility responsibility of the international community to protect civilians when their own government is not willing or doing the complete opposite.
Right.
So, when NATO went in, for example, that was the rhetoric used. It was the whole purpose of the campaign. It devolved into obviously what looked like more of a war scenario, and I think that's to be expected in most of the situations. But it really required that then we take a step back and then refine the responsibility to protect, which is in itself a newer principle and becoming more of an international norm. But that's also why looking at Syria, Syria is something that STAND has been keeping a very watchful eye on. We're keeping dialogue going with our membership about what's happening, especially we're seeing civilian attacks increase very recently. So it's something that, unfortunately, there isn't a direct advocacy outlet just yet for us to take significant action on, but there's a lot of dialogue that we can continue so that when those opportunities present itself, we're able to mobilize and shift faster. But we also want to be careful that we're not launching into something that's going to result in, or launching into asking for something that could potentially result in civilian deaths, and instead of actually preventing them, which any military intervention can do, any type of intervention. So Syria is something that we're continuing to be engaged on, but in a very different kind of way for STAND because there isn't a direct ask just yet. We're continuing our work on Sudan for sure. There's still lots of work to be done, and what we're seeing is al-Bashir is continuing his same old game. He shifts the spotlight from one area to the other so that he can really sort of manipulate tensions and build up attacks against civilians in another area. And then he uses all of that to tell the international community, see, these people wouldn't be able to get along without me. I'm the only one holding them together. And that's just simply not true. The people of both Sudans don't want to be fighting any more than anyone else in any other country. They're bearing the brunt of it. It's not just about direct attacks anymore, but now we're seeing a famine hitting Sudan, and there's just entire way of life is continually being wiped out. So one of the things we realized in STAND was that because this is an ongoing conflict, it's not just about the urgency of a genocide in Darfur anymore. It's about a comprehensive solution to both North and South Sudan, and really providing a space for them to create, their own peace. So given that, STAND is kind of taking a step back. Instead of just pushing out the advocacy ask, which is what we've been doing for most of our engagement on Sudan, we're taking a step back and focusing again heavier on the dialogue. And this time we're bringing in diaspora groups and civil society groups and really opening up that conversation. We also, most of our students came in when it comes to engagement on Sudan through the Darfur genocide and being interested on that issue. They don't necessarily understand the tensions between the two Sudans or that historical battle or the different regions that are being marginalized now and where there are, the same types of atrocities that happened in Darfur were taking place, anywhere from the Nuba Mountains onward. And they tend to be regions that are controversial in terms of both governments, North and South Sudan, are fighting over the territory, and it's still to be determined who gets it. But it's another manipulation of the government.
And so right now you talk about, STAND being actively involved in that, and I think what's also important is that you say that, you also go in and let people know what the history is. But before people saw whatever happened on the news or saw something on CNN, which I'm assuming has also been the case with Congo. I know that, Carly, you do work as it relates to the Conflict-Free Campus Initiative, which many people may not know about. I mean, Congo really doesn't make its way to the radar. What has been your experience as it relates to working on, I guess, what we call the CFCI, Conflict-Free Campus Initiative?
Yeah, so last year I was the national coordinator of CFCI. It's a constituency of universities who are prioritizing companies that are going conflict-free. Now, what that means is that there's this whole thing called conflict minerals, and it's basically 4 minerals, tin, tungsten, tantalum, and gold, that are found in eastern Congo, and they're fueling a human rights crisis. They're fueling rebel groups who are committing egregious atrocities. And so the idea with the campaign is that we put attention on companies who are using these minerals, say, hey, I want a conflict-free cell phone, I want a conflict-free computer, I want all my electronics.
Similar to like Blood Diamond.
Exactly, it's very similar. It's very similar. And so by putting attention on companies, they have control of their supply lines and can really stop the funding to these rebel groups and hopefully bring an end to the conflict, or at least bring it to a place where solution is possible.
Yeah.
And so right now we have about 100 schools that are working on becoming conflict-free, and actually we just had the 10th and 11th officially come conflict-free. It was Duke and then St. Andrews in Scotland. So it's been really, really exciting.
Yeah.
So, and it's just amazing how it's grown. I think in the past year, we've gone from like 2 to like 100. So it's amazing.
Wow, and there have also been some states that have taken up an interest as well. I was Massachusetts or California?
California has a conflict-free bill, and then Maryland just passed one.
Maryland, okay.
But then we also have 2 cities, or 3 cities now. Adena, I think it's in Minnesota. We have St. Petersburg, Florida, and then Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania. So it's really, really exciting just to see like how it's grown and how it's really taken root. And
yeah, it's been another point where STAND has been able to build lots of partnerships, both with policymakers and other movement members on Congo, because obviously the conflict-free minerals campaign is core. It's at the front and center in terms of what members can really do to get involved. But as a movement, we've come together, and we know it's not a silver bullet. There's much more that needs to be done.
Right.
But I think coming together and crafting that narrative has allowed the campaign, the initiative, to be more successful, because then people recognize it for what it is. It's not a one-size-fits-all and this is going to solve it, right? But it's a step in this ladder that will hopefully lead to peace in Congo one day. And I think painting it in that picture also requires that our membership understand a little bit more about the conflict itself and the different components there. So this has also been a phenomenal initiative, especially with people like Carly, who have just been so proactive in making sure that the narrative fits what we're trying to do. It's just been an opportunity for real education and discussion on Congo as well. So I think that's been good.
So in the last minute or two that we have, let us know, one, where people can find you if they want to get involved, start their own organization, and also you have an upcoming event, I believe, on July 8th.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you talk about the event. In terms of, in general, if people want to get involved, they should just go to standnow.org, and they can reach out. They can also just email info@standnow.org. And no matter your interest, no matter your experience or skill level, or even your knowledge on this, the great thing about Stand is we have a model that can plug in everyone. So no matter what you want to do, we have a way to meet your strengths and your interests and plug you into the movement. And then, do you want to talk about the event?
So we're having an event on July 8th, and it's called We Choose Peace. And basically, it's commemorating the 1-year anniversary of South Sudan's independence from Sudan. And basically, we want to bring together the community, especially diaspora communities, and just amplify their voice. They're calling for peace. And even though their government continues to choose war, the people of Sudan, South Sudan, want peace. And so we're really there to just celebrate that and make sure their voice is heard. So it's 4 o'clock on July 8th. So,
in D.C.
Standnow.org. I definitely could commend you all. I've heard about your organization for years, before I've even, seen some of the work that you do, and I know that y'all even operate on the middle school levels as well as internationally. So just thank you very much for showing our young people that there is a way to get involved and stay active, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you so much.
No problem. That's going to do it for another episode of Real Talk. Once again, my name is Omékongo. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at realtalk@omekongo.com. And remember that our children are 50% of our population, but 100% of our future. Let's make sure we're taking care of them. See you next time.